pixels fall, he cracks the code, solves it all. Dark web secrets, firewalls tall in the cyber jungle. Here's the call. Digital ascent, we're climbing high. Voices in the ether, touch the sky. With tech and games and culture bright. Come along with us, ignite the night. Digital ascent, we're climbing high. Voices in the ether, touch the sky. With tech and games and culture bright. Come along with us, ignite the night. Sean's got the joystick, he's ruling the zone. Gaming world's his digital throne. From pixels to planets, he's never alone. In the realms we conquer, the seeds are sown. Jordan's gaming flair, he's got the beats. Pixel quests and high score feats. Pop culture vibes with endless repeats. In a podcast, he's on the streets. Digital ascent, we're climbing high. Voices in the ether, touch the sky. With tech and games and culture bright. Come along with us, ignite the night. Ignite the night. Ignite the night. Tune in tight to the digital roar. Brent's got tech, he's laying the lore. From circuits and chips to the cyber core. Plug in and we'll give you more. Maps on the edge, watch those pixels fall. He cracks the code, solves it all. Dark web secrets, firewalls tall in the cyber jungle. Here's the call. Digital ascent, we're climbing high. Voices in the ether, touch the sky. With tech and games and culture bright. Come along with us, ignite the night. Digital ascent, we're climbing high. Voices in the ether, touch the sky. With tech and games and culture bright. Come along with us, ignite the night. Sean's got the joystick, he's ruling the zone. Gaming world's his digital throne. From pixels to planets.
Good evening, folks. Hello, hello. Mike, what's going on? Mike in chat saying, rest in peace to Skype already. Miss
R.I.P.
Mandykins, my lovely lady.
Hello,
That's my
hello.
wife, for anybody that doesn't know. And then you got Papa Bragi. I wonder who that could be.
Wonder who that could be.
I wonder who that could be.
Yeah.
You guys will see a new face on stream tonight. We have a special guest here, Dave. Oh, we got Savage Cody in chat too.
Hey, Cody, thank you for coming, my man. Good to see you.
Savage Cody. Good to see you.
Yep, absolutely. Matt, I don't know. Did we want to let Dave do some early introductions that are non-pertinent to the interview, just so people know who he is,
Yeah.
why he's here, that sort of deal?
Yeah, yeah, Dave. Why don't you just give us like, a, hey, I'm Dave, and give us like a brief about who you are and what you're into or whatever, and then we'll get into the stream, and then we'll do the interview.
Yeah. So I'm Dave. If you can't tell by the gray hair, I've been around for a little while. I've been in IT 30 years. Took my first programming class, like official one, when I was 11, and I won't say what year that was, but it's a long time ago. Um, for those of you who are old enough to remember it, I worked at Babbage's, which later got merged into GameStop, and then worked in high school at GE Capital Corporation. So like I've been in IT for as long as I've been sentient, I think. So most recently, I've been working for a incident response firm, Kroll, if you've heard of it, and I spent about 5 years up until about 6 months ago on our internal response team that does things like ransomware response and ongoing monitoring and like the major incidents that happen from that. So fun
Awesome.
blue team stuff. It's what I like doing.
Awesome. Well, man, thank you for coming. We definitely appreciate it. I just want to check. Did you say that you took your first programming class when you were 11?
Yeah.
That's crazy,
My
man.
my parents, like I had a Commodore 64.
Yeah.
That might date me a
Yeah.
bit. And I used to get these magazines and I'd type in basic code. Like I had the tape deck so you could save the stuff off. Like I'd
That's
type
so
up
awesome.
games and save them and then play them again later. And my parents, one summer, there was a local community college that had like a public open course you could
Mm-hmm.
sign up for. And they're like, Dave, do you want to take a programming course? So I took a programming course in BASIC. And I think
That's
they were
awesome.
Apple IICs
Sure.
that we took that course on, like the big 5 1/4 inch floppies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beauty.
And then in high school, I took quick basic Pascal, and the teacher's like, well, you've done everything we've got. So she went and bought me a C compiler and some C instruction manuals, and I
That's
started learning
awesome.
C. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. It's awesome to have a teacher that like really invests like that.
Yeah,
And
it was great.
I'm gonna guess that all of that probably made like a difference downstream for you in your career.
Oh,
And all that
absolutely.
programming. Yeah. All that programming.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for the introduction. We'll go ahead and jump into our first topic, which is, I believe it. You got it queued up, Brent?
I hit the button.
You
Apple
already did
Intelligence
it, man. You already
Hey,
delayed.
did
look, he hit the button.
Siri still needs training. That's what I labeled it.
So what I did is I asked Brent to give us a readout of what is Apple Intelligence, I guess, and what features is he aware of, and because I believe Brent, you do have the new a fully featured Apple phone. I do not. I have the 13 mini, but I'm just unwilling to. What did you say to me, boo?
Are you booing Apple or booing the fact that he's got
Yeah.
a 13
Wait,
mini?
hold on. Which one? Wait, yeah. Before I get
booing
all
Apple.
mad. Oh, okay, that's fine. I don't care.
Not
if
you. You've always
Yeah,
had
well, I
those
thought
dumb
you were
little mini
booing
iPhones.
No, not
He's
boo
he's
Matt.
booing my whole segment. That's what he's booing.
No. Hooray, Matt, for his small phone that fits in your hand. Anyways, Brent, my man, tell us give me the lowdown here. What does this Apple Intelligence thing do, if anything? Is it a joke or not, I guess? And I guess afterwards, what are they hoping to do next?
So it's been a long road with Apple Intelligence because they announced this mid last year, the whole Apple Intelligence platform, which was all encompassing. It's like we're going to put Apple Intelligence in everything you know and love. We're going to add Apple Intelligence to it, across our Mac lineup, across the iPhones. Oddly, one of the big things omitted from that is their Vision Pro. Like
Wow.
arguably their most advanced piece of tech, and they're like, nah, that doesn't need Apple Intelligence. So, anyways, that's a weird one. Initially the whole advertisement was, which I was most excited about this piece here, was Siri has been lacking for a long time, right? Like Siri has been arguably one of the worst voice assistants in a lot of ways, and they haven't really tried much with it, and so they're like, hey, Siri is going to get better. We're tying Apple Intelligence to it. She or he, I was going to get ready to say she, but you can make it whatever you want these days, is able to, correlate data. If you say something like, I don't know, tell me what my schedule looks like, it's able to go and read like all your email titles and stuff like that and understand scheduling and do all these things and make a real concerted, educated effort to build out your schedule and tell you just how busy you're going to be. And like, instead of just like reading it verbatim, right? Or in terms of like search results and stuff like that, able to give you better search results. Essentially, the way what I related it to was like the back and forth voice chat that ChatGPT has. That's what it's supposed to do. Which coincidentally, that's what I have my extra button on my iPhone tied to is the voice chat for ChatGPT. So like I can
Siri.
yeah, I can take it or leave it right now in terms of Siri. But so all that to say, that one big particular feature where I consider that to be one of the most useful things that they've been touting is still not a thing, and they're saying that that's still like probably 2026.
Wow.
So really, like the whole year, they still need that thing to bake. That's the reason I made the title. I made it. Siri still needs training. So I don't know what issues they're having with that, especially when you've got people like OpenAI already doing this with ChatGPT. But some of the other things are a little bit more gimmicky when it really comes down to it. I mean, there's some cool writing tools and whatnot. Like in the Notes app, they have writing tools. And in all of the word processing apps over on the Mac OS side, there's writing tools for you to do. And in the email too, for you to say, here's this message I typed. I want a more friendly tone. So you hit the friendly button and it rewrites it in a friendlier tone. Or I want a professional tone, and it rewrites in a professional tone. But I'm so conditioned now by the back and forth with ChatGPT already, and having that like back and forth conversation, even just via text, it's lacking in a lot of ways on the Apple Intelligence side already, just in that regard, because it's very like one and done. You're essentially clicking a preset, and like if you like it, cool. If not, you don't have to use it. And you're back to what you started with, right? It's not like, hey, Apple Intelligence, I don't like that version. Give me another version and add this. It doesn't do that in a lot of the apps. So like I said, that particular writing tool thing's available in the Mail app, in your Notes app, stuff like that. They also, one of the other things that they kind of slid in there at one point was the removal function on images to be able to select something and remove it out. And that is actually reviewed really well. Most reviewers say that that's probably the best on the market in terms of how well it stitches together the background replacement with the AI functionality. That particular tool, as far as I'm aware, I think you have to be on wireless. It will not let you use it over your cell plan. The last I checked.
Because it's just pushing so much data, or what?
I guess. Yeah. See, Mandy. So that's my wife in chat, Miss Mannequin. She has the brand new one. So I have the 15 Pro. She has the 16 Pro, which is the 16 Pro is the one that they were like, this is the Apple Intelligence platform right here. This is, if you want Apple Intelligence and you want everything Apple Intelligence has to offer, get you a 16. And even hers, man, like her first Apple Intelligence stuff didn't come out until a beta update. I had to enroll her in one of the beta iOS updates, and then finally we started to see stuff, and then finally that was released to the GA build. But so that's one of the things. The other things that they've added are the Genmojis. So we're back to kind of gimmicky stuff. It's like if you're in the emojis and you're like, man, I wish they had, like, one of the funny examples I saw was like, I'm going to type in purple burrito. And they're not, why would you need a purple burrito emoji? But he typed in purple burrito and got it generated a purple burrito emoji. So like just random crap. And then they have the image playground, which is kind of like, gosh, what was the AI tool that I used a while back? I mean, there's a ton of them, but it's essentially an image generator with AI, and it kind of generates like sketch cartoon-esque stuff, and it gives you like little suggestions down at the bottom of like, I don't know, styles and all sorts of stuff. So it's, once again, for me, it's all the gimmicky stuff that I have. It's fun to play with, like when you first get the phone or when it first drops via an update. And then honestly, as time goes on, you find that you're not even really using half that mess, especially in the day, just your regular day to day. Once again, what I was looking forward to was, what can they do with Siri? How can they make that as good as that back and forth that I have with the ChatGPT? Because like I said, right now I can push the shortcut button on my phone and get into that direct voice interaction with ChatGPT, and it is sharp, man. It works well. And I'm not relying on, it's not going to tell me Wi-Fi only. It doesn't matter. Like, as long as I have a good connection, I can have a back and forth conversation with it. And really what I like too with the ChatGPT platform in that regard is the fact that it still opens it up as a session in my history, all that back and forth. So I can go back later and get all the text from that. So, I mean, they've got a lot to make. I mean, maybe for all I know, maybe this is the reason why they pump the brakes on this specifically, because maybe they didn't have some of that feature parity that they initially wanted to have with the competition. And they're like, hey, this is going to be a lackluster thing. We've been hyping this up forever now.
Yeah.
Maybe
wanna
we
get laughed at
should
on the
stop.
playground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where it stands right now. There's some cool toys to play with it, but like there's no reason to use it as like a selling point in my mind right now for the platform. It's not there yet. It's just not there yet. I still use ChatGPT every single day, and I've yet to find a replacement for it.
Some of the
I
stuff
find it
that-
interesting. Sorry, Matt. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say some of the stuff I think that they say they're gonna be able to do eventually is really compelling, right?
It is.
The app
It is.
to app, they're talking app to app stuff. They're talking go hunt through all of your stuff and then go find it. I mean, what they're touting it as is pretty close to a real virtual assistant, like the
Mhm.
good kind. Like the kind that everybody, like a personal assistant who knows you and what you're about and what your stuff is. Like, what's my driver's license number, for instance? If you've taken a picture of your driver's license, a little scary, also, just a little bit. But
You don't say.
yeah. But I mean, there's some amount of, if you want really, really good functionality out of these things, like of any GPT or personal assistant, you have to feed it data, or else you're just a generic blob to it. But as you feed it bits and pieces, like it also takes the shape of that missing piece in your life, if you will, right?
We're not
And
selling a dating AI, Matt. 'Cause
no,
that's what it sounds like you're doing.
I don't. When I think of missing piece in my life, I think of the thing that tells me when my schedule opens up, so I can schedule another meeting. More importantly, with a resource that isn't going so well, or something like that. And look, man, you who know me know I'm like crazy on my calendar, right? I basically work in a
You're an
month
animal when it comes to your calendar.
Call me
It is
Hannibal.
really-
Hannibal. That's fun.
An animal.
An
An
animal.
animal. I was like, Hannibal's kind of weird, but I guess I'll go with it. Yeah, I am.
No.
I basically, for those of you,
That doesn't even make sense.
no, I was like, I'm just old. I don't know what he's saying to me anymore. No, look, for those of you who don't know me, I basically run my calendar in like a month over month repeating calendar. And that is how I operated my last job, where I had project work. I had my calendar booked out at like 75% 4 months in advance. So like I really get at it. And so having something do that work for me would be really preferential, or like help out with that. Sean, I think you were going to say something, sir.
Yeah, I find it interesting that Apple primarily succeeds the most in content creation or like photo editing. Like it seems they've kind of always been that way, and it's interesting that rings true for their AI as well, and their like picture generation and background. Like it's more of an observation than it is anything else. But they've always been super creation heavy. So I'm interested that it still holds through even with their AI.
Dave, you got any thoughts on any of this? You like, I forget, I don't remember whether you're Apple or Android. So, I guess I should know that because we've been texting. So it's either green or blue.
I've got apples.
There we
Couple of
go.
apples. But neither
Okay.
of them do the AI. I use
Okay.
ChatGPT pretty heavily. I use
Yeah.
Copilot a little bit just because that's what I get access to.
Yeah. Feel that.
Use Codely a little bit. I've done some just playing with offline models as well.
Yeah.
It is a little surprising that Apple hasn't done more with it, frankly, just because this is somewhat a solved problem at the level they're trying to sell it at, right? It does seem like they're trying to do an awful lot on the actual device, which is going to limit them a good bit because transformer and attention technology doesn't scale well on small GPUs. So I'm sure there's some device limitations still that affect what they do, but be interesting to watch. Clearly, LLM is a card that's gotten played, and it's not generative AI is here to stay. So everybody's going to figure out how to use it to make us do more work.
You said to make us do more work. Ain't that the truth, brother? Dave out here
look,
with the truth bombs. For those of you listening, Dave is the man and he speaks the word. It's true.
I'll tell you, coders are already saying, "Hey, I'm 10 times as 10 times as effective writing code with this," which just means that managers
Right,
expect 10
that's
times
what
as much
code.
code to come out of them, right? That's
Man,
how it works.
That's the problem. Yep.
I have
Yep.
lost count. For a while there, I was keeping count. Oh, I'm pretty good at this. Like Brent and Sean know, along with those good calendar skills, I've got really good guesstimation skills when it comes to how long is the task going to take me. I'm really good at it. So for a while there, see, Sean's nodding along. Like I've guesstimated like 100+ hour projects within a 10-hour window type of thing.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
That's unusual.
Yeah, I am.
He's got this weird sixth sense. It's so weird. He'd be like, I think it's going to take about 4 hours. And you'd be like, 4 hours and 20 minutes or like a little shy on either end. And you're like,
yeah, I'm not really like, I just like, I can't tell you. I just happen to know, brother. And so for a while there, I was keeping track while I do a coding task and I'd be like, oh man, that was an 8-hour coding task. And it only took me an hour. And now I'm cranking out what I would consider to be 8 to 12-hour coding tasks in 30 minutes, something like that. Yeah. And it's crazy the amount of productivity. And a lot of this like coding that I'm doing is like data analytics, take code from these 12 resources and, make something sensible of it, if you will. Yeah. Or, other people need data. So I go hunt down, the data points in Intune that meet this criteria and I grab it and then I add the 5 things. Well, it doesn't matter. The point is that, I'm vastly accelerating my coding process, and my coding process is vastly accelerating my my ability to discern what is happening in my environment. And all of it's just like all of it's multiplying, so I'm able to get, like if I thought of these things of projects, I'm able to consume, who knows how many times more projects now, because, I used to set out a day for coding. Like every once in a while, I'm going to code this in a day. I don't do that anymore. You know what I do? I get frustrated by a problem. I say, I have to click this button in this manner 35 more times, and it's going to take me 25 minutes. I'm going to code for 45 minutes with the assistance of a GPT, and I'll never have to click this freaking button ever again. And like I did it a week and a half ago. I got frustrated. My junior was out, so I had to do some of his tasks. I got frustrated by like some of the tasks that were like, click this button, copy paste this field. And I was like, I did it one day. And the next day I woke up at like 5:30 in the morning to start working. I was like, I'm not fucking doing that again. And instead I spent the next hour coding. And guess what? I haven't clicked that button since. And he's going to come back from work
Matt
and he's not going to click
clicking buttons.
I
Just
do.
absolutely.
I just want to get it right,
crazy.
man. I want to scale. I want to scale. And man, and my buddy's going to come back. My junior's going to come back. Guess what? He never going to click the button again either. Why? Because I wrote the code for him too. Right.
Yep.
And
now he can do something that adds value with that time.
It's amazing, man. That would have taken me a full day. I would have had to wait, and I would have never done it because the button clicking task is 15 minutes a day. A lot of 15 minutes in an 8-hour period. So, hard to justify. Not so many in an hour though. Way easier to justify that. So
exactly.
Okay, long rant, but it would be nice for Apple to get on the playing field. I don't know.
Yeah, the chat brought up a good point too. Like Mandy was highlighting how she had a good experience, because one of the things I didn't mention, excuse me, was the it has a feature where it'll summarize notifications essentially. I had limited success with it. Mandy has said that she's enjoyed it, but then I believe, who was it? Dat Sass came in and was like, I just had an issue with it too. And you'll see a lot of mixed reviews of this across the web. It has a tendency to really take a lot of things out of context in the wrong way. And there's a lot of cool, like funny examples. Some of them are a little bit morbid too, unfortunately, but there's a lot of examples on Twitter where people are like, it summarized these 10 messages from 10 different apps. And it was like, said something like my mom had died or something like that. And like, it summarized a whole bunch of stuff. So they like alarmingly, they're clicking their alerts. And once you click them, it expands them back out and like blows that envelope back out. And they're like, oh, it's just my mom saying that like, she hit a raccoon on the way home driving or something like that. And it's dead, like it's roadkill, but it summarized it as my mom died. And it's like, what? How does that make sense? And so even mine was doing weird stuff when it came to that. I turned it off. I didn't like it at all. It wasn't great. So
That's
I
funny.
understand the intent. Another good point that you brought up, Dave, too, I wanted to hit real quick before we move on is, how you mentioned they're kind of limiting themselves. Apple is doing the on-device AI, but it's been this like tug of war with folks because you've got the privacy folks saying, "Oh, we praise Apple because of this. The data never leaves the hardware."
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like, well, what can we do with it? And really, it only I've seen it being touted more recently with the newer M4 chips. Their silicon, of course, where apparently it's made leaps and bounds in terms of AI processing on the chip. But I mean, who knows how far they can actually take that? It still doesn't beat, shooting data out to a server farm and it grinding all that data for you. An M4 chip's not going to be doing that anytime soon. If it does, we've got, I don't know, maybe Apple's going to get into the quantum computing that we were talking about the last time around.
Mayor Rama? I haven't looked it up, so I haven't looked at my notes, so I don't know how to say it anymore.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What was
There's got to be
It's
some.
Maya Rama. It's Maya Rama, guys.
Maya Rama.
That's right.
Yeah. Dang. I had to go look it up.
I mean, there's going to be some huge leaps in matrix math soon, I'm sure, right?
Mhm,
That's going to make
mhm.
this less of an issue. If I could figure out when that was, I'd shorten NVIDIA, but I don't know that that's happening in a predictable way. Right.
I will just point out that, this is like the opposite of what Amazon's doing, where they've moved all of their processing. Hey,
Right.
look, if you've got an Amazon Alexa device, you should know that it's going to be shipping your data off device to the cloud, and that you no
Okay.
longer have an opt out in like 11 days. So, I hate it. I don't have these devices, and this is a reason why. About to go into the garbage. That's right. That's how I feel about it. You ship
It
my
was
data
garbage
to
from the
Amazon.
start.
Yep. You ship my data to Amazon, you go to the garbage. Goodbye. Yeah,
Goodbye.
big thumbs down. Okay. I think we're good to move on.
Skype's funeral.
Skype funeral.
Do we have any sort of like funeral trumpets, 21 gun
Brent.
salute, anything like that?
You got Brent. Where
Man,
is
I
it?
don't actually. I don't have anything like that. Yeah. All I've got is like a sad trombone.
There
Sure.
you go.
Let's
And
get
I
it.
don't even
Let's get
know that it would come through.
It
I
did.
heard it.
It came
Yeah.
through.
I got it. There we go. It doesn't really feel appropriate given the fact that it made it like 20 years. And it was one of the most successful pieces of software ever. So, okay.
It's good enough.
Yeah, it's good enough. So I've got, a quick timeline here. In 2003, it launched in Estonia, which I didn't know. I did not know
Amazing.
Skype was not US based. eBay bought it for $2.6 billion in 2005. I do not know how much first of all, I do not know the currency of Estonia, nor do I know how much $2.6 billion equates to. My guess is that it equates to a good time, though. And then an investor group paid out $1.6 billion to buy a 65% stake of it off of eBay in 2009. Microsoft decided to play big and bought it for $8.5 billion. I bet those Estonian people were wishing they had held out now. And now they're shutting it down 14 years after purchase. That's crazy. I mean, Skype is like, when I think of Skype, man, let's see,
Yeah.
like that, I feel like that was, gosh, was it a precursor to like Yahoo Messenger and all of those? It feels like it might have been. I wish I had
AOL Instant
It's
Messenger
prob-
definitely was before it.
There we
Yeah, it
go.
was definitely
Years
before.
Yeah.
before it.
Okay. Okay. That's
It just
fair.
improved on it.
Yeah. It was a fair
did.
iteration, though.
IRC.
Mm.
IRC was around long before. I'll have to admit, when I saw the news article come across the first time, one of our chats, I thought, wait, there's people still using Skype? I didn't even know it was still around.
It's crazy.
So
I think it was primarily used
Yeah.
for international calling, right? Because it
I
makes
think you're
it
right.
Yep.
easier.
a lot of people use
Uh,
it internationally.
Yeah. There were some locales where it was exceedingly cheap to do it.
Mhm.
But I mean, I guess the market's not there to keep servers on. They need it for generative AI instead.
The problem with Skype, so I used to manage a client that had Skype, and the updates were
up.
terrible.
Like as a
management-
like a business. Like
Skype for
hold on, they
business.
use Skype for business, dog.
Yeah, they use Skype for business.
That's crazy. I didn't know anybody.
They had a
actually used
server
that.
hosted locally,
No.
and it was
What
the
year
bane
was
of my
this?
existence. This was like maybe 4 years ago.
Bro,
maybe
what,
less.
what's
Yeah.
wrong with Teams?
Look,
Or
man,
Google
they had
Meet?
it. It was cheap. It worked. Like that's the thing. It was
Wait.
a one-stop shop, right? You buy it once, and then you have the ability. You just add users to it, right? You don't really have to think. And it did what it was supposed to, and it was good at the time, and for what they needed. The problem is, the updates made me want to quit my career in IT. Legitimately. I hated them so bad, and because it had so many ties into AD and other things, it like if you didn't get it right, if you didn't do all the steps correctly, it would have horrible ramifications. I was sweating every time I went to go update this thing.
But-
it was
But the
terrible.
docs were good, right? Docs were accurate though, right? Were they?
Huh?
Were the docs accurate?
Depends.
Like if you
It
downloaded
depended.
the right one, or if you
it
prayed to the right
depended
God.
on the version, it depended on what you're stepping up to. 9 times out of 10, it would bork, and you would have to go to forums and figure out, well, this one particular thing didn't go right, and then you have to go like either undo it or try to fix it because it's already screwed up other things, and you can't really revert it back because again, it's tied into AD. So now you have all these other problems that you're dealing with. It was I'm getting PTSD just thinking about it. So as much as it was a workhorse and as innovative as it was, I'm glad to put it in the dirt. So
Well,
Sure.
Goodbye. I guess I probably shouldn't have given it the AOL Messenger goodbye. There's probably a better Skype goodbye. I just don't know it off the top of my head. Who's got the Skype goodbye clip? No, nothing. Nobody's got
No.
the sound effect.
Well, I don't even know what it sounds like.
There you go, guys. That's why
I
it's being
remember
put
it.
to bed.
That's
None of
why
us
I
know
think-
what it
yeah.
sounds like, and we all know what the Discord and Teams ones sound like. So
Well, I know what the
There you go.
AOL one sounds like too, though, because you
Well,
had goodbye, and then when your friends got offline, you just hear the door shut. You're like, oh no, where'd my guy go?
oh man,
Where'd he go?
it is crazy. How
AOL
technology
Messenger had the
changes.
best sound effects for sure.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well,
All right, does
Goodbye,
anyone have
Skype.
like anything to actually like pour out for Skype? We said pour one out for the homie.
I could pour some of my Gatorade into my coffee cup. Which
Or I
I
can pour
should-
what's left of my tea into my.
There we go.
There it
Pour
is.
one out.
There it is.
there we go.
Pour it out.
Awesome.
Pouring out for Skype.
All right, what are we on to next? Let's see.
All right. Russia is friend. Da ili niet. Influencing of chatbots. So this is hold on. That SAS says you can use that SAS says that you can still use AOL. I know we're backtracking a little bit, but I just saw that and I think that's ridiculous. They actively update it.
I think there's an app for the iPhone.
There's an
You're joking.
I think so.
bro.
All right, we're moving the digital ascent Discord over to AOL Messenger.
Yeah, we're going back to AOL Messenger. Yeah, you can just get off Discord right now.
Can you imagine?
Ridiculous.
I really want to double check this link because I'm not
It's
sure I
because it's
trust
a
that
Rickroll,
SAS.
or maybe it's just fishing. Maybe he just fishing. No place
Maybe
better
he
to
just
fish.
fishing.
Yeah. All right. Back on topic. Russia is friend. Da ili niet. All right. So this is crazy in my mind. There's a group out there called Pravda, and they have purchased a ton of domains, like 150 domains. And since 2024, they have flooded the internet with 3.6 million propaganda articles. And the goal of this is to get chatbots to consume those millions of articles and then start spreading disinformation via the chatbot the same way you would via, like, I don't know, a cable news network. And I've got some crazy statistics for you here. This is from a company called NewsGuard. I wondered about putting this in here because it makes some pretty radical claims, but I saw Forbes pick up the story also, so I feel pretty good about it. I trust Forbes. All right, so Pravda by the numbers. 150 domains aggregating these from these sources. 207 disinformation narratives spread over the last 3 years. 49 countries and regions targeted. 3.6 million articles that have been identified. 4 social media platforms leveraged to like respread the article in 46 languages, which is that the network is pumping out content in. This is crazy. This is like, honestly, it's kind of fantastic. Like, it's kind of amazing that somebody thought to do this, and it makes you wonder why more people haven't. I mean, this is cheap now, right? Creating propaganda articles is really, really cheap. Yeah, Dave, hold on. Dave, I saw you stick your finger out there. What were you going to say, man? What were your thoughts?
I'm not sure I would assume other people haven't thought to do this. I mean, if you look at DeepSeek,
right.
there's some significant work to make DeepSeek follow the official Chinese stance on various things. Try to ask DeepSeek about Tiananmen Square and see what you get.
Yeah.
It's truly fascinating. There's some really good articles out there about people who've kind of broken through DeepSeek's filters and gotten its real feedback on what it thinks about things like Tiananmen Square. It's interesting.
Oh, interesting. I haven't seen that.
I have not seen that.
For the record, we are not pro DeepSeek on this podcast in general. I think that we discussed it in the supply chain woes episode as part of supply chain woes, even because that's what it is, man. It's the supply chain woe. And because it came out and it worked and it was a little better, and people were loving. We banned it. My DeepSeek came out and I went to my boss and I was like, this sounds like something we shouldn't let anybody use. And he was like, yeah, no kidding. Ban that on everything, please. So, right. I mean, it's bad stuff.
I saw an article back in January on Medium. I just found it again. Dude is his name is Jim the AI Whisperer, and the article is called "AI's Political Warfare: DeepSeek AI advances the global interests of the Communist Party of China." It's a little different from trying to infect other AI bots, but if you think they're not
doing it,
I'd be shocked if they weren't. So
I would say honestly, like I said that, and I was like, man, that was probably wrong. I think you're probably right. No, man, you're probably right. I mean, look,
I don't have any evidence.
You can make some.
They're not the only sharp tech people in the world, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think other people have to be doing it either.
Sure.
I was gonna say advertently or inadvertently, right? Like you can, like realistically, like to some degree, anytime you interact with the chatbot, it seems like you affect the chatbot. And so, if I feed it my sloppy spaghetti code enough times, theoretically somebody else is going to get some of my sloppy spaghetti code back out. And that's I say it kind of jokingly, but it's also a real concern because you can pop in your own API keys, and those API keys may eventually pop back out in somebody else's like little request, whether they said, give me the shit and prompt jack that thing, or whether they just were like, let me get some code. And it was like, here's a real world example for you, bruh. Pop that guy into your GitHub and see what happens. So it's interesting, like to think about it from that level. I don't know. I think this is like honestly kind of genius, right? Like GPTs are hungry for knowledge, and a lot of places that said no,
They'll take
you
whatever you
can't
feed.
data mine from me. And so, like, if you just leave, like, it's thirsty, and you left an open watering hole, it seems obvious for it to go and grab as
Whether
much
it's
as it possibly
poisoned or
can.
not, it doesn't care. It just
Nope,
drinks.
it doesn't care.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It, in some ways, it's like the next iteration of, you remember 2016 election, there was a lot of search engine optimization poisoning of disinformation that came in. It's very similar.
It's extremely similar. I would
People
say,
trust Google, people trust ChatGPT, so it's a lot easier to influence somebody by trying to get ChatGPT to tell them something than, a
mhm,
.ru website, right?
that says common sense, basic reasoning, and understanding how to properly conduct your own research without bias is really the only true way to avoid all that crap. Man, you ain't wrong, dog.
Right.
It really is. It's becoming harder and harder, right? And
It is.
I mean, like the search engine optimization poisoning is an example of how it's becoming harder and harder, right? Because you've got to, like, you're hunting for information, something that you don't know about, but you still have to suss out what the bullshit is, right? And it very quickly becomes a, like, what's the detail?
Yeah.
And then you start in my opinion, a lot of times you end up with, well, what source what source do I think is right? And it's just two computers on the other side of the internet, each competing for you. And, like,
It's all judgment
it's not that
calls, though,
simple.
right? Like
Yeah.
it's not. It's really hard to judge anything at face value anymore. You have to have a certain
Yep.
level of skepticism when you look at
Yep.
anything nowadays, because you really
Absolutely.
just don't know. And I've gone to some sources before and been like, do I trust that? Like, it'll put sources in there, but do I
Oh,
trust that source?
bro,
I don't know if
when
I
I was
do.
first when I was first testing it out, I was like, give me some research about something that I knew, like, wasn't right. Like, it was something I knew about. And then I was like, okay, now go ahead and cite your source on that. And it cited its source. And awesome, Dave. Thank you for sending that over. We'll drop it in chat. Thank you, my man. So it cited a source. And what was most interesting is it did grab three, like, biologists. It's about biology of some sort or something. And I did grab three biologists, all of whom have written papers about biology, none who have collaborated together, and none of which wrote the paper that it cited. And it was, like, on this page in this paragraph, and it was real certain about it. And I mean, like, it's like that. I think that's part of what makes the GPTs even harder, is because, it interacts with you like a human, but, like, one that lies emphatically with, like, no give a shit or
Prove it.
anything. Yeah.
Yes.
It just goes.
And it sounds really, really good if you're not like PhD level expert in the field.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah. It's nuts. Um, okay. Anyone else got anything else on this here?
I don't believe so.
I expect to see a lot of LLM used in disinformation, just in general, right? Whether it's trying to poison it or using it to create disinformation that sounds more trustworthy, sounds more like a Western reporter writing it, whatever it is. We'll see a lot of it, I expect.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am inclined to agree. We're going to see more and more of the LLM stuff. And probably we're going to see a lot of bullshit seek through, because humans are just terrible at proofreading. It's just one of the things most humans are overarchingly bad at. Look, I know there are great proofreaders out there, right? But, like, no. Right? Not at the level that's required for the 300 pages of AI generated slop that you just made. Right?
Right.
So, okay. I think we're good on this one. We're going to move on to the big topic, the interview with Dave. So, Dave is, we already covered this, but, I wanted to have Dave on because, he's a friend of mine, and he's an expert in his field in, incident response. And while, I do blue teaming and, Brent and Sean are both capable administrators and leaders in the field, sometimes it's just nice to have an expert tell us everything that we don't know. Um, I'm a big believer that IT and security are massive like the ocean. They are extremely wide and also extremely deep. So there's not like a ton of the shallow side and the deep side. It's mostly just all wide and deep. So the best way that you learn is by being exposed. And Dave here has been exposed to a bunch of terrible incidents. So hopefully we can all take this moment to learn from Dave. And okay, I guess we'll start off with some easy questions first, man. I think that they're probably easy for you. They're hard for other people. How do most ransomware events start? Is that
Ooh.
that a fair one? Can you?
Yeah, it's a fair one. So let me
Yeah.
first start by saying, while I work at Kroll, don't take anything I say tonight as official Kroll advice, please. I'm sure if any Kroll lawyers read this, they want me to say that. So, and just to level set on why I can answer ransomware questions, and the team that I work in, we work literally hundreds of ransomware incidents a year. Sometimes approaching 1,000, right? Like it's a lot of ransomware incidents. And so I see this all the time. And
Oh,
and
man.
for selection bias, the vast majority of them come in as privileged investigations where insurance is paying a lawyer who is hiring us to do the investigation. So obviously I won't talk particulars because privilege, but
Yep.
just, so I'm not going to see as many of the ones that are, not people who are at least sophisticated enough to secure insurance, which drives a lot of kind of the changes in the last couple of years in ransomware. So, how they get in the first place, it's always the same kind of 6 or 8 things that everybody's used to. So passwords get compromised, machines aren't updated properly, things are misconfigured. People open that email they shouldn't open. People expose the wrong thing to the internet, like RDP to the internet is just asking for ransomware, right? So, it's a lot of the same every time, but it kind of goes in cycles. And I'd say the last year, the vast majority of the cases we see start with a compromised VPN. And so that happens one of a few ways, right? Either it's compromised credentials and credential stuffing, or it's a misconfigured VPN, or a lot of times these days it's just a VPN somebody forgot is sitting there and they've not updated it, and there's a 0-day. And
Like
so,
the Avanti stuff, man.
yeah, exactly.
Bro, so many. Hey, for those of you that are interested in security, if you're not watching the CISA Kev list, the CISA known exploited vulnerabilities, you're making a mistake. That
Yes.
is like that's the list. If you patch those, you don't like. I'm not saying you don't get ransomware, but brother, you don't
No.
get ransomware.
It
So
helps a lot. It helps a
yeah,
lot.
man, because then you're only dealing with the like at that point. If you're patched on that list, then you're left dealing with the real winners, the people who you're probably not going to stop anyways, right? Because they got like real money in real time.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look,
Sometimes, unfortunately, that list gets updated 3 months after a 0-day's been being used, and
yeah. Well, there you go.
then you're kind of out of luck. But you
Yeah.
can't do much about that.
No, just
what
it's
you
what it
can
is.
do is know your attack surface, like know exactly what you have facing the internet, and be really. I mean, everybody should be patching everything all the time, and I know how hard that is. And anybody who's been in IT in any length of time knows that's virtually impossible to actually do in any complex organization. But those things that are facing the public internet, they really need to get patched, and they really need to get patched quickly. And frankly, waiting a long time to patch to see if it's going to break something is just asking for trouble. So I would, know what's facing the internet. That's really important. You'd be surprised how many people don't know what's facing the internet in the organizations, and then make sure it's all patched and secured and has same configurations. Don't leave default passwords on things. Make sure you're using the best security. So if you can force 2-factor authentication for everybody, including local logins, do that. Like do what you can to make strong authentication. Helps a lot. So I'd say a lot of time coming through VPN. It's maybe oversimplifying, but ransomware is not like one person. Ransomware is this huge set of organized crime networks and syndicates, and it's very loosely organized. A bunch of criminals who don't fully trust each other. Surprise, surprise. right? So typically you've got at least 3 groups involved. So you've got like access brokers. So these are the folks that are either port scanning the entire internet looking for a vulnerable Fortinet or a vulnerable Cisco ASA or whatever, and then getting access. They confirm they have access and they go sell it on a forum. Or they're the folks running like the Luma Infostealer malvertising campaigns that all of you have had to deal with. Like
I don't think I know
everybody on
what
this
that
call
is.
has had to deal with it 200 times in the last few months, I'm sure, right? The
What is it?
We've made everybody do hard captchas, so copy paste this into your run, and Luma Infostealers
Mm,
turn into credential dumps. And the guys who steal that stuff, some of them are smart enough to really monopolize on that. So they take that dump and they divide it into VPN logins. They sell it at an access broker. They've divided into bank logins. They sell it to somebody who wants to go steal money. They divide it into emails that are in construction companies, and they sell it to a BEC campaign place, right? Like they know how to make those logins useful. So we'll see that kind of stuff be the nexus or what originated it. So yeah, a lot of VPN. Still some of the other things, OpenRDP, some unpatched Tomcat server from 20 years ago that you forgot was sitting there is running a list serve on it, right? Like those kinds of things happen. They're not the majority. These days, it's just so easy, low-hanging fruit to knock over VPNs and to find credentials that are floating around that are somehow in a two-factor authentication exclusion,
okay.
and they can get used.
We
Or
we had a
didn't
client
set up
with a
two-factor.
yes. We preach that heavily here. Um,
All the
we
time,
had
basically every freaking
yeah, every
episode we
single
talk
episode
about it.
is MFA. So if you don't have it, you need to put it on. We had a client that had a externally facing Exchange 2010 server.
Ouch.
It's
Yeah,
fun stuff. No issues
I'm
though,
surprised
right?
that was recent, that it took that long, frankly. There was 1 month where I think we took in upwards of 120 cases in a month that were all Exchange because it
Yep.
was such a mess.
Wow.
It's
Why?
During the
it's
during the
how
proxy
integrated.
logon mess, we called it
Yep.
Exchange-Palooza internally. It was a mess.
Exchange-Palooza. That's
I mean,
good.
all of us
That's
worked
good.
hellish long hours for a month straight.
Man, there's sometimes I look at those events and I'm like, I don't have that tech. I get to sit this one out. And I've been
Right.
so thankful, man. There's been 2 or 3 times in my career where I've just been like, nope. When like I joked about it, but I meant it. The Avanti stuff. Oh boy. I am so thankful I've gotten to sit that one out because they patch it in every month. That shit is
Yep.
not fixed. And that VPN is still vulnerable. Some of the FortiGate stuff too. I got
Yeah.
to sit out a lot of the FortiGate stuff that's been going on over the past couple of years, where it's just
Over the
like
past couple
VPN,
of years,
VPN.
it's been, NetScaler, Citrix NetScaler, which is not exactly VPN, but kind of works like VPN. It's been SonicWall, it's been FortiGate, it's been ASA. Like they've just been taking turns. And then you had all the IP switch stuff that came, just multiple. Was it W? Not trying to think of the. There was like 3 former IP switch products that all got hit in short
Really?
order. So just, it's a lot. It's a
Yeah,
lot
with
to keep
the
up with.
with the Fortinet stuff, I feel like at the past 2 places I've been employed with, it's always you're never hitting the patch cycle for that stuff. You're always patching out of band, always.
Bro, the problem is
Always.
the Fortinet stuff is way unstable. And so there's a huge aversion to patching for
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, well,
That
I mean,
makes
it may
sense.
like, all right. So check it out, man. So I administered Fortinets for 4 years, and I basically administered a fleet of like 200 of them, and for a bunch of different companies, and nobody like first of all, until like I made a lot of changes there that took multiple years to get rolling down the line. Nobody wanted to patch these things like ever. And there was no patch plan. The patch plan was ignore that shit. And and then when a big bad critical came out, it was like, all right, we all gotta like do 4 major patches because
I
you
was
can't
part
just
of
go.
that, and it was
You
terrible.
were. Yeah, so I realized the
Stair-stepping up.
problem. Yeah, I realized the problem, and I like shanghaied a bunch of service desk people who wanted to grow their career. And I was like, let me teach you Fortinet patching. And you had to step up, like first the 0.2 and then the 0.6 and then the whatever. And every single time there was gotchas, man. Some patches removed features and like you didn't necessarily know, some outages from that. And, you know, thank God, like you can just like, I had people on site to help me out remotely. And then like some of them, like sometimes the device just doesn't come back up. You don't know why. Nobody knows why. You call
Yep, and you're
FortiGate
making
and
a
they're
trip.
like, they were like, well, like this happened to me. I patched the device. It didn't come back up. I got on the phone FortiGate. I was like, why didn't this come back up? And they were like, because your device is bricked. And I was like, but brother, I've done 180 of these recently and none of the devices bricked. Why did this device brick? And they were like, hardware problem. Okay. It had only been running just fine for the last 200 days.
Goodness gracious.
The problem
Man.
with patching is you just never get caught up. There's never a point where you're 100%. And you can put pretty little graphs, you can put pretty little charts and say this is this far. You can get rough estimates, but it's always going to be behind. There's always going to be something that lags, it's offline, it's a laptop that somebody doesn't bring in.
Always.
And it's a struggle, and a lot of people just don't understand. Should have started with a reboot. Yeah, should have there. Stop fast. You're correct.
Whoops.
Whoopsie. It's so difficult to. It's like pulling teeth to get people to actually update their stuff, even when you automate it. Like it's so tough. But it does really help if you can convince people to do it.
It's hard. Nobody
And
wants
then
to
I'd say,
downtime.
kind of related to that, once they're in, you know, starting about 2022, most insurers started requiring people to have EDR to get insurance, right? Like that, you guys probably saw it, but like if you wanted to renew your cyber insurance and you didn't
Gotta
have
have it.
EDR, you needed to go buy EDR. Ideally with managed detection and response, you know, I don't just say that because I sell it. I mean, also, I really think there's value to it. But because, you know, if the alarm goes off at 2 a.m. and somebody doesn't get it till 6, it's usually too late. That said, need EDR. But the criminal gangs pivoted once we did that, right? So when I first started this, you'd go into an engagement and there'd be 10,000 machines that had Emotet or QuackBot on them in that environment. And all of them also got ransomed, right? Like that was not that unusual. Or it'd have, you know, Cobalt Strike just sprayed everywhere.
Yep.
Like we even knew like exactly what the encoded Cobalt Strike looks like in PowerShell because you just start looking for that. It's the easy button. Like it's going to be sprayed everywhere. You can find where it comes from. Easy to walk back. But that's just not the case anymore. Like now that EDR is everywhere, they come in and the first thing they start looking for are machines that don't have EDR.
Can I pause real quick? Can we
Yeah.
explain EDR, because a lot of folks may not know what it is.
Sorry.
Yep.
Endpoint detection and response. So where that varies from something like antivirus that you might have is endpoint detection response. The original one is a product called Carbon Black Response. That was like the original super thing, and it's almost completely defunct at this point. Not really, but kind of. It's been struggling the last little bit. Just it's been replaced with Carbon Black Cloud officially by VMware and Broadcom, but you know, CBR was the original. Now the big names there would be, you know, Palo Alto or SentinelOne or CrowdStrike or Carbon Black Cloud or I think Sophos has an EDR product.
Yeah, I think Sophos does. Yeah.
Defender for endpoints, EDR. So essentially what it does is instead of just looking at like signatures, it actually looks at all the behavior. So if I go look at an EDR console, we monitor, I think, 6 EDRs that we support at Kroll. We're vendor agnostic. I can go in and I can look at all sorts of telemetry. So it'll be things like who logged in, where'd they log in from, process starts, what DLL modules did a process load in memory if it's Windows, what IP addresses is it communicated with on what ports, what files is it opened and modified, what files is it created on disk, you know, has it injected process code into other processes? That's really common, both legitimately and illegitimately. A lot of malware used to do that. So EDR lets you look behaviorally at what's happening on the system to look for patterns of bad. So it made it really hard to run malware even well obfuscated malware, because it's still going to behave bad. And so we see ransomware groups moving to using what I would call dual use tools. So things like AnyDesk and TeamViewer and Screen
Yep,
Connect.
makes sense.
These are things you guys all know because you probably use some of these to
We-
manage your
Yep.
networks,
Yep,
right?
totally legitimate.
They deploy
stuff.
that. They might deploy a free RMM tool, which then they use to deploy the ransomware later, right? Or to redeploy Screen Connect if you find it and remove it. So they'll use some of those things. The other thing that we see them do is they look for machines they know won't have EDR. So there's a couple of ways they can do that, right? One is if they actually compromised your VPN, there's a good chance they have the creds for your firewall and they can look at the network traffic and they just look for machines that aren't making DNS queries to CrowdStrike or whatever your EDR is. Just, hey, here's a set of machines that don't look like they have CrowdStrike on them. Let's start with those. The other thing is they know that there's no EDR for VMware vSphere. That most people, you should go do it today, but most people don't have EDR on their vCenter. Sometimes they don't have it on their Veeam. And so they're going to target vCenter, Veeam, vSphere to go straight to from the VPN. We see that happen a lot. These days, they are going after the Hyper-V, the vSphere, your Veeam, or whatever backup solution you've got, Commvault, whatever it is, right? They're going after your backups. They're going to try and erase them. And then a lot of the ransomware is now actually written to run on ESX hosts or on Hyper-V. So
Really?
instead of going and
Curious.
encrypting all the machines in your network, which they would use creative things like GPO or SCCM or an RMM tool to deploy it, they now, instead of doing that, they often just come in and encrypt all the servers in your server farm right after they go and delete the backups. So they know that you're pretty much dead in the water until you do something.
Yeah,
about
you're
it.
hamstrung at that point. You have
Scary.
no option.
So,
That's super scary.
how are they getting to the backups though? Are you finding that the backups are domain joined and they're just using those same admin creds to log right in, or like what? Like how are they getting into these?
So earlier this year, there was a couple of Veeam CVEs that would let them do credential dumping
Yep.
straight off that Veeam box. The stinky thing is once you've credential dumped off the Veeam, and oftentimes they're shared credentials, once you get on that Veeam, then there's often credentials for all your other servers just sitting there to be stolen off the Veeam box. So then they can go right over to that ESXi box and
That's
grab what they need, right? So they're looking for Veeam. They're looking for a lot of Veeam servers are AD joined. They're just looking to map their way over to a domain admin account. Oftentimes that's using something like Kerber roasting, which is a technique that can be used for poorly created service accounts. So if you've got service accounts that are domain admin, they're a huge target because they can be Kerber roasted and then used as though they're a domain admin, just move around in the environment.
Those service accounts, man. And this is a
Yeah,
point
they're
that
terrible.
you know, you brought up earlier where understanding your environment is crucial. You have to know where your pressure points are and where your weaknesses are, or otherwise you're going to get absolutely obliterated. And it's crazy how many clients that you interact with where they have zero clue.
Yeah.
And some of them have in-house IT that have zero clue
Oh wow.
what their
Wow.
network is doing.
I
And
guess I
it,
shouldn't say, oh wow, I know this.
And my
That's
my
cool.
experience is most people know it less well than they think they do, even if they have a pretty good handle on it.
That
There's
I believe.
still there's still boxes sitting in corners they don't know about, right?
oh, absolutely. And it's hard
there's-
too.
It's really hard.
Yeah,
Like,
I
It is
saw.
hard to learn a network. It really is. So I
Absolutely.
can't be super critical
Yeah.
because sometimes it can take, 6 months or a year before you even feel comfortable in the environment. So, and in that time, you may not know. So I'm not trying to bash on anyone. That's not the
Sure,
point.
sure.
I'm just saying it's really true. Being
I-
diligent about understanding your network will save you
Yeah.
a lot of headache down the road. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's just I'm passionate about
No worries.
knowing
I'll
your
say I've
network.
seen sophisticated shops with relatively mature security programs still get ransomed, right? Like
Oh, sure. Yeah.
it
100%.
happens. Even with a lot of the right controls in place and things, it can happen, which makes it really important to be ready for it. But yeah, I mean that's they intentionally avoid EDR today. because they know that's the way that they're most likely to get caught by a monitoring service. They try to erase logs, they erase backups, and it's crazy because oftentimes they know your network better than you do within about 3 or 4 hours of being in your network, and that is terrifying. Like they know exactly where your ERP system is. They know where your backups are. They know how many DCs you have and which one you forgot to put EDR on, which also means it's probably not in your patch management software, so it's out of date. They go after that. It can be sobering sometimes to come into a place where you're like, man, I feel for you, because it's not like you're doing things wrong. You just
Right. You steer the wrong stick.
pulled the short straw today. So
Yep.
Man, every time we've talked, this is, we've had this like talk like 2 or 3 times. That's why I knew you'd be good on here, because I talked to you a couple of times about this, and I was like, this guy knows his stuff. He's got a ton of things to talk about. Every time I talk to you, I'm like, man, I'm like going through mental checklists in my head. Am I doing that? Am I doing that? Well, I'm pretty sure I'm doing that. How do I know I'm doing that? And what I end up with is this feeling that like honestly, man, I'm a pretty good, like, not to be like toot, but I'm a pretty good security admin. I know every one of the concepts that you're talking about, I basically know about. And all of these things are things that are pretty regularly in some sort of review schedule. It doesn't mean it always gets a ton of scrutiny, but like I have something that comes around, every month, every quarter, every week, that causes me to go, okay, check, yes, no, I think that this is done. And still, even with all of that, with what I feel like is an extensive amount of effort, I'm still like, man, what if there's something I'm missing? There's probably something I'm missing.
There is something. There's always something. That's the terrifying part about it.
Yeah,
is that
and
you
that's
just don't know.
and
Right.
You can do best practice. You can do all the things, right? And at
But
the end of the day, you can say like, I've done my absolute best to do this, and there's that little tiny crack that you just weren't aware, and then all of a sudden your network's
It's
ramped.
that
And
it's like 5 years ago when you went to all of your remote locations and you replaced that, that old Fortinet with a brand new Palo Alto, but you forgot you left one of those Fortinets turned on.
yep.
And nobody's been using it. It's just been sitting
It's
there in
just
the
a
closet.
failover,
The
but it's
people
got the
who
VPN
work
on it.
there and go to the printer next to it every day never noticed it because they don't know to look for it,
Yeah.
right?
they'll set
And
their
it's just been
coffee
sitting
cup
there.
on it. They don't really think twice about it. And it's just sitting
Right.
there.
And then the bad guys find it because it's on a public IP.
Yeah,
It's pretty easy to find.
Bop,
It
bop,
got
bop.
listed in Shodan at some point.
Yep,
So we never
that-
go scan it. Right.
for sure. It's crazy, man. I mean, I do a lot of what like I said, my month is my calendar is booked month over month. And it's because I have so many, like, man, I'm constantly going through my checklist, and not every week is the same. And it's still like,
Good.
even then I'm like, ooh, like I'm missing something. I'm constantly going, ooh, I can improve upon this. One of the times we talked, and I was like, oh, I think I maybe has a gap. And I think I even decided that I had 2 gaps. Then guess what?
Nice.
The next day I had meetings with the sysadmins going, hey, how does this system work exactly? And now I have not 1, but 2 additional recurring checks, all because of you, that I'm doing. And some of them I feel really good about. Some of these things nobody was looking at, and somebody needed to be looking at them, type of thing. You know what I mean?
That's great.
So,
Good.
like,
That's great.
but I mean, like, it's crazy hard to know all of the things that are out there. Okay, so recapping, we talked about how did it start. We talked about some basic defense. We talked about what are they doing. Okay, so after initial ingresses happened, let's just say, you oopsied on your VPN or whatever, it happens. Initial ingresses happened. What types of things, like, do you recommend that, like, people do to stop the spread? Like, I mean, I guess an obvious one is patch, right? Patch systems prevent more than unpatched systems, but are there other things that you're like, oh, well, there's this really common thing that you could do, and if you do that, then you're okay.
I mean, look, I'm a huge fan of defense in depth, right? Your goal is, you should think about your security at some level like a bank vault. Like people think of a bank vault. If you're building a bank, you buy bank vaults based on how many minutes it takes a skilled vault cracker to get into that vault, and you always want it to take a little longer than it takes the police to get there, right? So because they're going to get in if they keep persisting, right? So what you want is to put controls in place internally that does two things. It makes them be noisy, right? And it slows them down. So you have more opportunities to pick up something that MITRE attack framework that you're instrumented to pick up, right? Whether that's through your EDR or through your SIEM if you have one, hopefully, or through your identity monitoring and management platform, or your DLP, or your if you've got something like Darktrace, some NDR technology, like you want to try and force them to be noisy in as many places as possible. So a lot of that has to do with the same principles that you've been hearing people talk about for decades, right? Things like least privilege. When I say least privilege, I mean like total least privilege. I don't love the term, but think it's the new one, zero trust networking, which is really just least privilege.
You don't like that one? You don't
I
like
like
zero
it just
trust?
fine.
That's
it's
a
just the
good
latest
buzzword.
It's a great buzzword.
You don't
Okay.
like the
But what it
buzzwords?
really means is least
Yeah,
privilege.
yeah, you're right. I know.
Right. So when I say that, I mean, think about things like who can get to the the VLANs where you're managing your vSphere, where you're managing your VP, your backups, where your vCenter sits. Are those VLANs locked down? Like you can't even get on the VLAN. You don't want them to ever be accessible from anything that faces the internet. Like those should not be accessible from your VPN. You should have to go from your VPN through a jump box, make people two-factor to that jump box as you can. Be really careful about who can two-factor that jump box and what host they can come from. So when you think zero trust, you're authenticating the host, and you're authenticating its its security profile, and you're authenticating the user on the host. Like all those things are important. And then you're saying what systems can it get to, what data can it get to, what network segments can it get to. Really try to give that as much thought as you can. Least privilege will save your rear because the bad guys have to work to get at the stuff if you do it. Man, the few people who have really done least privilege well wind up being saved. It doesn't make it not hard. Like
Yeah.
the bad
It's
guys
always
get in
hard.
and they get things that wind up having to be cleaned up. But man, it's a lot easier to go through the pain of a
But
password, global
you
password
mitigate a
reset.
lot of the damage though when you do it
Yes,
that way.
exactly.
All
The
about limiting that
only
blast.
and it's so interesting because you have to also consider the amount of overhead it takes to do those things and maintain those things as well. So
Yes.
that's part of the other reason why a lot of people don't do it is because you
It's a
have to
lot.
document those things. You have to make sure that they're good. You have to check them regularly to make sure that there's been no changes, that somebody hasn't come in and made a change that they thought was good and now it's bad. So it's like it's not just the singular change, which is
Yes,
difficult in and of itself. It's also the maintaining of that as it
absolutely.
sits throughout its entirety. And a lot of people are just like, it couldn't be me, and then just move on.
Well, I understand that it couldn't be me, and I thought that until I sat in this chair, right?
Yeah.
Like when I
Yeah.
sat in,
Never
I sat
think
in the
that
admin
again.
chair, I thought it. When I sat in this chair and I saw hundreds and hundreds of ransomware cases from, a 6-computer plumber to 70,000 endpoint manufacturers, like you get these huge
Pain.
range, and it's everyone. Like there's not an industry that, well, I can't really speak for like DoD stuff just because that's not our space. There's a whole
Yep.
different industry that serves that. But let me just say
Yeah.
that in the normal commercial space, there is not a vertical that's really like immune to this. It just everybody. And people
Well,
think
they're all
I'm
using
not
the
going to be
same stuff.
targeted. But with ransomware, nobody's targeted. Like they're not. It's just opportunistic. You
Yep.
got unlucky enough to wind up on a credential dump or at an access broker because you didn't patch something. It's going to go to ransomware, right?
Yep.
So,
Uh,
yeah.
it's worth calling out that I have a buddy who works with a lot of DoD people, and it's a mess. It's not like
I,
the stories that he
yeah,
tells me are not good.
yeah.
He told me one story where he goes, I called these people and I was like, yo, this dude's not in China. He told me he's not in China, but Chinese IP addresses are logging in and doing a whole bunch of stuff in there, and his like his point of contact was like, okay,
Yep.
like uninterested in that event, and I was like, in my
Okay.
mind, I want to believe that it's 4D chess, but I just have a hard time believing it. Feels a lot more like negligence. I don't know.
I mean, that kind of sits to the second thing I'd say, which is really strong authentication. So two-factor authentication, conditional access is really, if you
Conditional access is a big one.
Yep.
go learn how to do conditional access in whatever you have and set it up. Like make it harder to log in when you have a risky login. Lock them out when you have a risky login. Make them call the help desk if you are willing to do it. And then impossible travel is huge. I mean, you'd be amazed
Yeah.
how much you could detect. It is not, a lot of people think, and I used to think this, just block every country I don't do business with. That certainly helps. There's definitely no harm in that. It can help.
I could just
But-
get a VPN.
But the bad guys buy hosts at bulletproof hosts all over the world. And
Yeah.
guarantee they have hosts in countries you do business in. There's a bunch of virtual private server providers, even in the United States, that are just notorious for kind of cycling through malicious hosts because
Oh,
you
we
can
have
buy
it
them with
happen
a
all the
stolen
time.
credit card.
They'll be from a different state. They'll be from within the
Yep.
state. They'll be like,
Yep.
it's
But impossible travel will catch it a lot of the time.
yeah,
Okay.
that is true.
Okay, I got one for you here, Dave, on this one.
Yeah.
So I get like a million impossible travel events all the time from all of my systems. I do not have a million account breaches. How do I know? Because I call them like all the time. And I'm like, hey, what are you doing? And they're like, I've got a VPN or, this or that. Or, there's always like a reasonable enough situation where I'm like, okay, that's not an account breach, right?
Yep.
So
So
you have any
tie it in with
recommend-
your
Yeah.
tie it in
Go.
with your conditional access.
Mhm.
And you can teach it to ignore a phone that is registered in Intune and a laptop that's connected to Azure Entra ID, right? So you can have some considerations in there so that you're not getting as noisy impossible travel alerts. It definitely takes some work to get those tuned out to where they make sense.
So I've thought about doing stuff like that, but a lot of times when there's a man in the middle attack, they just like open up their own session, steal the session cookie, right? And my understanding, and I'm hoping I'm wrong here. But my understanding is that as they're doing the man in the middle attack, like my computer is the one that's opening the session, so I'm passing all my Intune goodies, and then as it comes back, they're getting the token and the cookies that have all of that good stuff in it. And they come across and they say, hey, look, I am this laptop coming from just
Oh.
new IP address. Is that an accurate understanding of how that attack happens?
I would need to look at the particular man in the middle attack kit.
Okay.
But for that to happen with a man in the middle attack kit, if you've got proper authentication, they would need to be doing like an SSL decryption encryption. Usually what happens is they're doing like a proxy. And so you're actually getting a login that comes from them proxied through.
Okay.
So
And so it'll come through without the device ID that is in should. Yeah. Okay.
Should.
Yeah.
Because that device should have authenticated a separate way.
Okay.
With like
Okay.
certificate
great-
authentication or something that should not be nice to go through a proxy.
Okay.
yeah, I
That's
mean-
good clarification there. I appreciate
Right.
that.
And it's not perfect. There are ways to defeat these, but if what's happened is they sold a credential to a credential broker and they're logging in from, a DigitalOcean bot server, that should flag, hey, somebody just moved from, Tennessee to California in 10 minutes. Not likely it's them, right? So you should be able to tweak that.
Make the pain go away.
Yeah,
So much pain.
we're pretty complex and we have impossible travel and conditional access turned up, and I've got 4 devices and I regularly log in from cyber workstations that are actually in secure lab environments remotely that are spread around the country, and it doesn't set them off. So we figured out how to,
So you can tailor it.
yeah, there are ways to do it. So yeah, anyway, that is those
Dave,
are really
we do have a
helpful.
question.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Whenever, sorry, not to interrupt. I just wanted to point it out. Dad's asked, IPv6 ever get you locked out with that?
IPv6. Sorry, what?
Does
If
IPv6 ever get you locked out?
yeah, because it change. Your cell phone changes that
Right. Like,
cell
No.
IPs like all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so impossible travel should be GeoIP based, and like ASN based. So if your cell phone IP changes on IPv6, it should not be moving across the country. It should just be changing that last, especially if it's rotating quick, it's changing the last 64 bits, not the first 64 bits. So the
gotcha.
geolocation will
Good
be in
point.
that static part that's in
That's
the
a good
first
point.
64
Okay.
bits anyway,
That's a
Yeah.
good point.
roughly.
Cool.
Obviously that kind of depends on how the network scopes out, but you know, something like that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So
Go ahead.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
It's kind of circling back to the pen testing side of things, but as far as third party pen testing and tools that you can use to analyze your networks, because we do a lot of that. We do a lot of external, internal. We do unauthenticated scanning, and I've there's tools like Cyber CNS and Nessus and all of those
Yeah.
things. But are there any things that you find better or more comprehensive and actionable? Because part of the struggle that a lot of companies have with this type of stuff is going, okay, you've given me like Cyber CNS, for instance, crazy amount of data. Okay, what do I do with it?
Yeah.
Tell me how I'm supposed to parse this out. But then you have other things that are like, well, we'll give you the nice little executive summary and we'll give you the details and it's all in this nice little GUI. But am I really getting the full picture? Does it is it utilizing the same plugins? Am I getting the full scope? So I'm just curious if I I, I don't know if you deal with the pen test siding things, but are there tools that you've found that tend to do better than others?
So, I mean, we have teams. I don't do red team work, but let,
Gotcha.
let me
Okay.
just say that I get on the receiving end of red teams. I see some of those reports at times, and some are much better than others. You want it to be as realistic a scenario as possible with, ransomware, data theft, whatever it is you want to pick.
Yeah.
I'm also a fan of things like tabletop exercises. I think there's a
That's a
lot of
good point.
value in getting
Yeah.
someone who, we do this. There's other firms that do this, but somebody who is a practitioner who sees this stuff all the time to sit down with you and just kind of walk through a scenario and talk through it.
Yeah.
Real good way to just kind of give a sanity check on your incident response plan. You know,
Well, and it's like a live fire situation, and
it is.
it's about as close as you can get to it. And I know
It
that
is.
it'll really show you
Yeah.
where your weak points are, and
Yeah.
because
And a
go
good
ahead.
pen test should too, right?
Yeah.
So you should talk to the pen tester about, set up the scenario and tell them, hey, we want to know how crunchy we are once you're inside. Like what could we do to improve our authentication? What settings could we make on Active Directory to make it harder to do things like curb roasting, to gain
Yep.
access to domain admin credentials? There's settings you can do. I could talk for hours. Settings you can do on the endpoints. There's settings you can do at the Active Directory level that can be painful, but make it a lot harder to do those things. That it make you like resistant to Samba relay
Sure.
attacks, et cetera. Right? There are things. One of the things that I would recommend in strong authentication is get away from service accounts that are like manually set. Use group policy managed service accounts locked down to particular machines. And unless there is absolutely no way you can't do it, do not make a service account a domain admin. Like too
Oh
many
gosh, yeah.
applications go, make it a domain admin and it'll work. And somebody somewhere along the
It
line
it always
troubleshooting
made me
drops it in domain
cringe.
admins and
Ugh,
forgets it. Like
golly.
don't
Yeah.
don't have more domain admins than you need, and honestly, don't have fewer. Like I would say, everybody who needs domain admin needs a domain admin account that is different from
Separate
their daily
accounts.
driver.
Yep.
That they only log in if they actually need domain admin credentials, and they make sure that they do that in a way that is secure. And you can Google this, but there are authentication methods that leave uh, um, cache credentials on boxes, and there are authentication methods that don't. So you want to lean, if you're doing domain admin, to the ones that don't leave cache credentials, just because it means it's not being left around as much, right?
Yep.
So there's some good hygiene things you can do to make it harder, so that they have to jump through more hoops.
I guess
So
that's
we
the
talked
way
about
to
least
do it.
privilege, strong authentication,
Mhm.
immutable backups. So first of all, least privilege today, everybody go back and check how easy is it to get to my VMware or my Hyper-V from my VPN and make that harder to do. Because that's one you can do without all that red tape, because that's just going to be an IT. Like, go do
Yep.
that one. That one's going to help you. But also, just start thinking about things from in terms of least privilege as much as you can. Things like firewall rule sets, VPN policies. Like, does your VPN just allow every employee to come in and get to anything, or is it locked down to the like 2 systems they actually need to get to do their job? And can you be more granular in those policies? Those things help. And obviously zero trust. It's all about that, but it's a whole nother. We could do a whole nother couple hours on zero trust.
Yeah.
Right.
That's its own bear.
It is.
Yeah.
And then I would say like immutable backups, absolutely critical. And when I say immutable backups, I mean ideally not even your admins can delete those backups. Like there are services out there you can go buy immutable backups from where you ship them backups and they last 60, 90 days in the cloud and then they auto expire and nobody in your business can call and delete them because they're not deletable. Like immutable backups can save you when ransomware comes in because they are going to seek out the backups on site and remove them, and they're good at that. Like, you know, I've seen ransomware actors just destroy the Veeam storage servers. I've seen
Problem
them
solved. Yeah.
get into the NAS and turn off snapshots and erase all the snapshots, right? Like
Yep.
they're smart.
You don't need those.
They'll get rid of it and then they'll run the ransomware, right? So having immutable backups that are in some way stored in a way that they couldn't be deleted by your own admins on your network, really helpful. And then I love EDR and detection technologies. I'm a huge fan of EDR. I think it gets 80% of the visibility you need most of the time. SIEM is good too. NDR is good. These things help detect. You know, the more coverage you have of the MITRE attack framework, the better. Obviously, some of those things are much noisier than others. You don't want, you know, we make an art of trying to detect the right parts of that without the parts that just make everybody get alert fatigue.
Yeah.
And
It's a
we're not the
difficult
only
thing,
ones, right?
especially
It
with
is.
the seams and you
Yes,
start getting
especially.
log overload and you're like,
Yeah.
dude, I don't care. You're
Yep.
sending me too much. And then you get complacent. It's like these things, I think that's the biggest part is it goes back to the overhead. Is like, yeah, I want these things until I don't. And it becomes
Yeah.
way too much and you have to have somebody that's willing to tailor it and actually analyze it. And that's where a lot of these other businesses that have, you know, taken off have gone, "Oh, we'll do that for you."
Yep.
But it's super important, and that's one of the things that can make or break you is detecting it soon enough and stopping the bleeding. You want to
And
be able to know.
So
make
many,
sure.
so many businesses are checking the box too, though.
Yep.
That's the thing that I've ran into a lot in the past is like, hey, we want this thing. And you know, I pull like a sales engineer role with it. I'm like, you know, it does this, we're able to block that. And they're like, well, we just need it for our, you know, our cybersecurity audit, or we just need it for our cyber insurance audit. And it's like, okay, but you want to use it, right? And it's like, I mean, yeah, but we're also just checking this box so we can actually get this thing. And I'm like, oh no. And then like I've had instances where you know, talking about zero trust, you know, I used to deploy Threat Locker a lot. I love Threat Locker. It's a great platform.
Yes.
But
Yes.
Absolutely.
a business
Love
has
Threat
to be
Locker.
prepared for what that
Yes, they do.
means. And
Yeah,
they
they do.
ask that, you know, they're like, yeah, that sounds great. You know, zero trust. Awesome. And, you know, go through the whole sales engineer process with it. And then, you know, even in a lot of cases, they're great. The whole company is great about getting on the phone with you to onboard a client or sell a client on it.
Mhm.
And then, you know, everybody's on board. And then I've had multiple cases where I've had to pull it back because the company's
Wow.
like, we cannot do this anymore. It's too much. We don't want to maintain it. We don't want to have to pay you guys to maintain it. So we're going to check that box some other way, but it's not going to be this. And it's like,
Man,
it's so
good,
disappointing.
though. It's
It's
so
so
I do
disappointing.
really,
It's so good.
really like application whitelisting. I
Yeah.
really
Yeah,
like it.
And without a tool like ThreatLocker, it honestly feels like it's impossible to get because of the app data problem. Because
Yep.
anybody can install the app data, and maybe I'm just stupid or whatever, but I tried to do Microsoft's like application whitelisting tool, and me and my senior sysadmin sat down and we looked at it a few times. Eventually went, "This is a nightmare. We'll never get this thing off the ground." And we went back to our boss and we said, "Nah, man, not gonna happen. Find another way." And by when we said find another way, what we meant was we need ThreatLocker, is what we said.
Oh yeah.
And
That said, I mean, you can use the Microsoft one to do things like lock down that app data folder. Like just basically say you can't run applications out of the user hive. Make somebody install it.
like we can't
Back on strong
do that.
authentication. Back on strong authentication. No local admins is really key. Like people should not be admins of their computer. I'm not admin of my computer. Like you shouldn't be admins of your computers, and you should have something that randomizes local admin passwords. Don't do what so many people do, and the admin password that's in the gold image is the one that's everywhere, right? You don't want to do that.
It's worth calling out.
Microsoft makes it free if you use Labs.
I was gonna say,
Well,
worth
yeah.
calling
Times
out that you
free.
can do Labs.
Yep.
You can do Azure Labs too. Azure, for a long time, Azure was not supported in Labs, and then they put out a kludgy way to do it with like remediation scripts, and then they eventually were like, "What if we just bake this into the Intune platform?" And everybody rejoiced.
Yep.
Labs is amazing. Love Labs.
Make sure if you're doing SIEM logs or VPN logs or and this is just for me as a defender, when we come back in to investigate, that those are also included in your immutable backups, because man, it's so nice to be able to get at those VPN logs and be able to put back together what happened after the fact. So
that's a good call out.
That's actually a really good point.
That's
I
a
hadn't thought
good
about
call
that.
out. Now,
Yeah.
make sure your SIEMs also are getting immutable backups. Now I'm wondering if I can go in and delete all my SIEM logs. Can I do that? If I can do that, who else can do that? Gosh darn it, Dave. Now I have more
That's a
problems.
good thing to ask.
Every time I talk to you, I got more problems now. All right.
Hey, he's keeping you in a job, Matt.
Yeah, no kidding. And all right, man. So I definitely had a question about, during an event, what are some good do's and don'ts for security admins and service desk? And like some of them are like, I've heard people say leave all of your machines on and just get them off the network, and like some of that stuff's realistic and some of it's not, right? Like I have trained my sysadmins to pull the NIC on the virtual machines, but or decouple the drives, I mean, it's just pull the NIC stuff, but in real time it's hard to do that. So really make that right decision. So what are some good do's and don'ts?
Well, and I would say that the facts on the ground need to drive that decision. So, shutting down machines is great unless they're all mid encryption, and then they won't power back on. Sometimes, for instance, we've seen people who the ESXi encryptor couldn't run because the ESXi hosts were running, and they came in and shut all the ESXi hosts down. And then suddenly those VMDKs got unlocked and they all got encrypted. And it's so there's not a hard fast do this. Here's what I would say. Don't let your teams point fingers. In the middle of the engagement, you want everybody in the boat. You don't want people having blame. It is not about who screwed up, who didn't do their job, who didn't patch something. Everybody is going to be emotional. I work with a lot of people who it's their worst day of their professional career, right?
Yeah, bet.
And you get to see what people are really like at their worst. Cool heads prevail, and if you can keep it positive and what do we need to do to get to the next thing, the time for the lesson learns is much later. And frankly, if you do those well, they ought not to point fingers. They ought to look at how do we really improve this so that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
Give people the benefit of the doubt that they either didn't know better or didn't have the resources, or, it was either for lack of knowledge or for lack of resources, not because they were negligent or lazy, right? It's just too easy, especially in our field. We get people who, just personality-wise, we can point fingers. Don't let finger pointing starting. Know who you're going to call, right? Know who your insurer is. Know who their panel is for legal that you're going to call. Ideally, you could buy a retainer from somebody like Kroll. Like there's people who sell retainers, and that way you can call and go right in. So if you're big enough to worry about it, a retainer is a great way to make sure you've got everything lined up ahead of time so that if it happens, you can have the responders on the phone helping understand what's going on and which of those actions to take immediately. You know, I'm not officially here for
Yeah,
work,
yeah,
but
of course.
yeah,
But might as
buy
well
it from
talk
someone,
about.
me or someone else, right? That's fine.
Yeah.
That said, I think there's a lot to be said for knowing what you plan to do. Um, Famous quote, plans never survive contact with the enemy.
Yeah, bet.
Just know that your best IR plan is probably going to be the one you make after you survive the ransomware
Yeah,
attack,
bet.
not the one before. Tabletops will help, pen tests will help, but really knowing how to get the right people in the room quickly, which involves legal counsel,
Hmm.
business decision makers, PR people, whether that's, I would highly, you know, I'm
Hmm.
not a lawyer, but man, the most successful involve legal and PR working
Yep.
together to get ahead of the narrative and not wait for news to call them, right? So, you know, think about who needs to make the decisions in the moment and are the right people going to be in the room? Your sysadmins, your net admins, your server admins, your business owners. Can you get a hold of them fast to make quick decisions?
And following up on that, in your comment about incident response plans, do you like? Do you? I mean, like, do you feel like you need? Is a skilled engineer good enough, or like skilled engineers good enough, or do you feel like an incident response plan is needed? And the follow up or tag along on that is, can you tell when you're working when like there was a good incident response plan versus like when there wasn't, and
Yeah, I
you have
mean,
good
I can
engineers?
tell when I can tell when a client can get the right people in the room quickly
Okay.
or has the right people in the room at the beginning,
Hmm.
things go a lot smoother. Like the
Okay.
people who can do the work and make the decisions are in the
Okay.
room. And not
It
just one
matters.
set of those, right? Like you can get all the right people in the room quickly. They have the power to make the decisions because
Hmm.
that was thought out ahead of time. And
Okay.
hey, during this incident, these people are going to be empowered to make decisions and get it done quickly. Like that, it does make a difference. You know, I would love to say that screenshots of things, absolutely, they're helpful. Printing out like all your manuals and how to
Sure.
recover from a backup can definitely help your backups and your recovery. Knowing that you've got that offline and
Hmm.
handy. People hate paper, but when everything's
Definitely.
been encrypted, man, you'll be thankful you printed that thing out and set it on the desk next to the server farm. So yeah, I think there's real value in trying to plan ahead.
Okay.
Again, tabletop that out with somebody who really knows what they're doing.
Makes a difference.
Think that through as much as you can. And when you finish a major incident, go back and look at it and like, hey, what worked in here and what didn't? Be willing to change it.
So
Yeah, I think
that.
what a lot of people forget is that it's a living document. It's not a static
Yeah.
document,
Absolutely, it is.
and it changes. And as the people rotate, as people come and go, like it's a living, breathing document, and you need to be
Yeah.
focused on it because at some point you fall back on your training, and
Yep.
if you're not training it, then you're going to fall back into oblivion, and you're going to be really unhappy. So
Yeah.
we've just recently gone through some reworking of kind of our incident response plan when it comes to our involvement with clients, and you know, it makes a difference when you know, okay, here's the playbook. This is what we do, and this is how we do it, and then you can start to get some predictability
Yep.
in. I know that this is going to happen. I know that that's going to happen. If we're at this mark, then we know next step, etc. Until the incident's resolved.
Hmm.
So yeah, I love that. I agree wholeheartedly.
And there's definitely going to be, you may be hard to say prescriptively, we're going to unplug all the computers, right? But
Yeah.
there's definitely going to be the need to isolate certain parts of the network and hosts. There's
Bet.
definitely going to be the need to reset passwords and to
Yeah.
understand
Bet.
how they impact things and how to go about that process effectively, where you don't, force a reset that the threat actor then comes in and just resets the password themselves, right? You want to do it in the right way. You're definitely going to need to have to make some hard business decisions. Um,
Hmm.
you're
Yep.
definitely going to need to be able to restore from backups. Like there are some P&P that you want to nail down and know people can do in their sleep by following the
Hmm.
guide, and
Hmm.
that their uh, backup plan person can do if this happens while they're in Aruba,
Yeah, that's a big one,
right?
right? doesn't do any good if they can't log into the systems and no one knows how to work the conditional access. Yeah, that's a good point,
Right.
man.
Yeah.
That's fun times, I bet. Okay. So as we start kind of closing out, any like recommendations on lessons learned? You know, I know lessons learned isn't really like a sexy topic for a lot of people, but you know, I personally love them. I think that they are like,
Yes.
that's the like lessons learned is my favorite part because that means we get to like get screwed less next time, right? So anytime I have a little incident. So, anyways, what are your thoughts on
Yeah.
it, man?
Yeah, you gotta make lessons learned a safe space where people can really talk about what went wrong, and that nobody feels, you again back to the don't allow blame in lessons learned. It is not useful to say this happened because Sean didn't do his job. Like it's never that's
That's
not
typically the
productive.
case, though.
Right.
I was gonna say that would never happen. Sean would never not
Even
do his job. Dave out here
even
lying
if that's the
suddenly.
case, like there are better ways to look at that. Like
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
was the root cause why he didn't do that? Was it not outlined properly in the guide? Was it not accessible to him? Did the checklist like fall to the side? How do you make sure the next time, if this step's really critical at this point, like what do we do to make sure that that step is clear, that everybody knows that step needs to get taken? Like you want to think about it from a structural systems improvement, not a, hey, who screwed up, who's going to get a promotion and not this year. Because if you
Yeah.
go at it with somebody's going to go out feeling shame with their tail tucked between their legs, then that's going to be the last lessons learned that you get anything out of, right? You want to make
Yep.
sure it's as productive as it can be. And on the end of it, you've actually made it harder to screw up the next time
Yeah.
by whatever you come out of it. That would be my advice. Just think
That's
about the
awesome.
team dynamic.
Awesome advice there. And then you have any like crazy stories you can tell us? As we like, what's the craziest thing you've seen? What's the wild one?
No, probably not, because any
Okay.
particular crazy stories,
It'd be,
people would hear themselves in it if they ever listened to the
yeah.
recording.
It'd
I
be
had a
I get to
fun.
feeling.
see some cool stuff.
Yeah,
Man,
I was
Yeah.
I can
curious. I was like,
remember.
I
I
wonder if he can
know.
actually do it.
No,
Yeah,
I
I
know he
get to
can't.
see some
I'd
cool
ask
stuff
anyways.
that's fun. That there's nothing new under the sun, but occasionally you see something where you're like, oh, that was really neat. The first time, for instance, I saw Flawed Grace. Flawed Grace, it popped
What's
up for
that?
a while and then kind of disappeared, but it was on a bunch of different ransomware variants and ransomware cases for a short period. And it used this really interesting DCOM hijack that was part of one of the built-in Windows scheduled tasks. And they figured out that this scheduled task didn't have a DCOM helper object. And it would essentially install this malware as the helper object for this built-in task that was going to run on every Windows machine. It was just so masterfully written. And every time that task ran, it would like change the GUID, but the DCOM helper object was smart enough to go update all the registry settings to put it re-register itself. And it was pretty masterful. I'm like,
That's
man,
pretty cool.
there are so few of us nerds who have been in Windows long enough to even know what DCOM stands for. Like this is cool stuff. And that was
That's
the fun one.
cool.
I saw there was a
Yeah.
crypto miner. One of my earlier cases when I first got here, there was a crypto miner, later deemed Blue Mockingbird by one of our partners, Red Canary,
Mhm.
that it used this really interesting .NET profiler persistence that I'd never seen. So it would register it a little DLL as the .NET profiler for the system config profile, so like the system account. So a .NET profiler, if you're writing .NET code, it allows you to essentially hook into your code in .NET when it runs and do debugging, right? But
Mhm.
what this did instead is every time anything .NET ran, it would cause this to kick off and to recreate the malware files and start the cryptominer back. And so it took us forever to figure this out because I'd
Who
never seen it
starts it?
before. It was like
How is
this
this
brand new
starting?
persistence mechanism. I was like, that's
That's
genius, right? You're using this part
genius.
of the OS that's a
Oh,
feature that's really
Yeah,
useful, and you
man.
that's
found a creative
wicked.
way to make it part of your persistence chain. Really
Wow.
That's
interesting.
fun.
That
Man.
one was interesting because it had about 6 different persistence mechanisms in it. But that was the most interesting one I had seen at that time. So we see a lot. We get to see a lot of the new malware. We get to see how they reuse old techniques in new ways
Yeah.
to evade detection. It's interesting.
Yeah. I would say that, you know, since being in security, there's this like weird little game recognized game thing that
Yeah.
happens when I see something. Like when I see a good fish email, I go, "Well, dang, man, you really
Yeah.
pulled out all the brakes on that one."
That's right.
Like,
Yep.
whew, I'm glad I got here first. Damn.
Exactly.
It's kind of crazy. I don't think I felt that way until I got like an official security position and then started seeing some like more
Yeah.
interesting things in your run of the mill bullshit. And I started to be like sometimes you're right, man. You come across something, you're just like, damn, dude, you had like in the middle of the night, you woke up one night and you were like, I just had a dream and it was the
That's
best
right.
malware ever, right? And
That's right.
crazy
I
stuff.
just found this cool feature that nobody ever thinks about in Windows.
Yep.
I can use it as persistence.
Yeah, right.
Those are
Just
really neat.
dang, man.
It's great fun.
Cool. All right. Well, Brent, Sean, you guys got any like wrap up questions? I don't really have any more. We burned through all my questions.
No, I don't
No.
think so, man. We covered so much.
We covered a lot.
Yeah,
A
for
lot.
sure.
And this
We did.
and one of the
Highly
things
educational.
one of the things I'll say, at least to the viewers, this is like tip of the iceberg kind of
Very
stuff.
much so.
This goes
Yeah, boy.
so much deeper. So when you think about cybersecurity, know that it is a deep well, and this is why we need more people to do cybersecurity, because this stuff is nonstop. Like there's always something new. There's always a new vector that they are using to infiltrate your networks. And so this type of stuff, it is super cool, but it's really important. And people that do this kind of stuff are heroes in my opinion, because
Yeah, boy.
man,
For sure.
there's so much to it that, like, even I've been in IT for a while and I'm like, dog, I don't know. Like that's wild. So it's really neat to see somebody that's in the field and actually doing it, and kind of front line with it, be able to articulate some of it and kind of touch a little bit on that surface just to give that little bit more of awareness. So I don't have anything else, but I appreciate you taking the time. It's been super awesome. I've really enjoyed having you here.
Yeah.
Hopefully it won't be
Absolutely.
the last time, but
I've really enjoyed it, and I'll tack on that to say that I'm really deep in one tiny little sliver of cybersecurity. Right. Like I know it really deep. I'm pretty good at all my years in infrastructure and operations, understanding kind of intuitively how a lot of these systems work, which helps a lot. But
yeah.
yeah, they're to completely cover everything, you need a bunch of people who are really deep in their particular fields to come in and help you.
Takes a team.
You can take the things I did, and that's a great start. But there's so much more you can do to make your network hard to get into and to keep control of it.
Yeah. You are not wrong.
I did forget something. There was one more topic I forgot. I'm sorry, man. I know, but this is
That
important.
was such a great
It's-
wrap up,
I
man.
know
Come
it was,
on.
but this is a really important topic. So, man, we got to know. Do you have any recommendations for people who want to get into your field? So they want to, they want to do incident response work specifically. Like,
Yeah.
if you can, like, how did you get into it, or how do you recommend people get into it? Like,
Not
what
the
are your
way I did it.
recommendations? No, don't do it like him. He did it the wrong way. Okay, not
Let me
him.
just say that this field didn't exist when I started in IT, and I would not have imagined even 15 years ago that I would be doing blue team work. Interesting,
Sure.
but not what I was doing. So, you know, I can't tell you how to prepare for the job in blue team 5 years from now because it'll be different. But
Bet.
like today, the folks we get often have some IT generalist background. That's really helpful.
Makes a big difference. Yeah, I agree.
Unfortunately, you've got to kind of pay the piper. You got to put your time in like a SOC or some place where you're going to get some exposure. Be curious. The kind of fit for this job, if you're trying to decide if this is a job you like, is someone who really hates not understanding why something works. Like I was the kind of kid who took my toys apart and put them back together, and as I grew, more and more of them worked after I put them back together. But like I was the guy who just really wanted to understand like how everything works. It bugs me to see, like when I see a new persistence mechanism, like I literally can't sleep until I figure it out. Like I'll keep taking the forensic data apart until I'm like, oh, now I see how it works. Like that is just, it's kind of what drives me as a person, is to go figure out problems. And then just let people see that you're that guy. Be the guy who offers to help the senior person at the SOC. Be the guy who offers to go
for
right
sure.
along on a red team and look, and you can work your way up. I mean, people can skyrocket pretty fast through that. There's some good certifications. Really for like what I do, Sans GCFA is a good starting one. It's pretty expensive, but
Yeah, I was
man,
gonna say, bro,
it's
Sam's is like
great.
$2,500 or more
Yeah,
for
they're
the
really expensive.
class. Oh my gosh.
But you somebody will sponsor you on that if you get into a SOC and you show what you're doing.
Sure.
They'll help you get it.
Folks are paying more for college and getting less in return for it.
Depending on what
It's
college you go to, absolutely.
yeah.
Hmm.
If you are in, if you're college age and you're wanting to do this, intern, get a job part time while you're in college at a SOC,
That's good advice
Yeah.
at a
Oh,
place.
when
Like
it
you
there
comes
you
to
go.
IT.
cannot,
Yeah.
um, I can't overstate on the job training, just in general. The whole
Yeah, for
70 20
sure.
10 rule for job training, where 70% of what you learn is by doing it, 20% is by riding along with someone, and 10% comes from book work, really does
Yeah.
apply. You're going to learn a lot of foundations in college that are really critical for your whole career. That probably some schools, I mean, I know of schools that part of their university curriculum is to basically teach like the SANS curriculum data
Oh, well,
in
there
their
you go.
courses. And so
Wow.
if you get one of those, that's great. You're going to
Yeah.
get a lot of that stuff.
Gosh.
A lot of our folks starting in SOC might have like CompTIA Security Plus type certifications. There's a suite of CompTIA ones that are good, kind of introductory. Might help you get the foot in the door somewhere, an entry level. But yeah, unfortunately, you almost got to start at the bottom and work your way up. If you're in a business where you're in IT right now and you want to move over into it, go talk to the blue team and say, "Hey, could I work 4 hours a week and just shadow somebody and give some? Can I help you on the? Can I help you on the SOC queue? Tell them you want to help on the SOC queue, and you will be their best friend. Gives you some exposure to what they see every day. I got to tell you that this job gets really cool as you get off that SOC queue, and it can be kind of grueling. But man, the learning you get from actually working the SOC queue and getting the intuition of which alerts actually do matter and which
Yeah,
alerts don't is really helpful.
I agree with that.
So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
That was awesome, man. Good advice.
Good.
If y'all are if you're thinking about security, listen to what this guy's saying. I give I fully agree with just about everything he said. So that was awesome. All right. So I want to do a quick wrap up here. A little TLDR of, things that we talked about that mattered. So if you're tuning in at the end, you can get like the absolute meat and potatoes. So how do things start? They start, and Dave, you jump in and you correct me if I'm wrong at any point. So,
That's all right.
all right, how do things start? They start with, bad passwords, lack of MFA. They start with misconfigurations of your devices on facing the internet. They start with VPN tunnels that are, bad MFA, exception to accounts, completely forgotten about or unpatched, and then in addition to all of that, unpatched systems in general are a risk, and then also phishing. As for defense, it is patch, patch, patch. Public internet facing first. Know your attack surface. That's a huge one. And once again, go double check your MFA because it's probably not everywhere. Um,
Mhm.
Once people are in, what can you do to stop yourself? Least privilege access, zero trust networking, making sure it's hard to get somewhere else, you know, do not let people get to your to your vCenter or whatever or your vSphere, any of that from the VPN. This should be going into a jump box that you have MFA'd onto, and then hopefully MFAing another time onto the vSphere. You need to make sure that you have EDR everywhere. If you don't, then they're going to find those devices through divine magic, I guess, and
A lot of ways.
they will sniff them out through DNS magic, I think is what it actually was, and then they will go get those, and then they will start their the pain process. I guess I'll follow on there saying, if you don't have EDR on that device, are you sure that you're patching it? And that's right, and you're probably not. Let's see. I think that's all of that. Definitely take a look at your conditional access, and then make sure that your admins have a way in when they're not in front of their computer. Group use and leverage group policy, manage service accounts to control the service account problem. And God, please do not give them domain admin access because you will forget about them and they will cause havoc. Remember, service accounts usually don't have MFA, or they have some limited version of it, or they have exceptions in conditional access, and it just makes them exceptionally dangerous. Warm your backups. That means write once, read many. So, and ideally ship them someplace that won't delete them, even if you call them. Work the MITRE attack framework. I guess I would say I also recommend working the MITRE defend framework. I think that they both are valid ways to approach the problem personally. And then test your backups. Make sure you can recover, because guess what? If you haven't tested your backups recently, they're not going to work. Do's and don'ts of ransomware. The big thing here is that most of the facts are going to be driven by the data. I'm sorry, most of the decisions are going to be driven by the data that's happening in real time on the ground. It's probably hard to write like a strict incident response plan in a lot of cases. But the big thing is get the right people in the room. Make sure you guys are all working as a team, and keep your head cool. It's going to be hard. Let's see. And then lessons learned, got to be a safe space. Focus on process improvement, not who screwed the pooch. So I think that's it. How'd I do, Dave?
Sounds great to me. It sounds pretty good. I think you got at least 90% coverage. So that's great.
There you go. Listen to me, guys.
That's an A.
I now know what I'm talking
Take
about.
it.
I pass.
Right.
All right, cool. Dave, my man, thank you so much for coming
Yes.
on
Yeah, thanks
tonight.
so much.
It has been a blast having you here. The knowledge drop is fantastic. I don't know where else to get knowledge like this. Nobody really like it's hard to get people to talk security. It just is.
Well,
And
I was glad to be here.
thank
Thank you for having me. It was a joy. Enjoyed meeting some of you guys, and
but not you, Brent. He didn't
really
enjoy
enjoyed
me.
Yeah, not
Yeah,
not
he
me.
didn't enjoy you at all.
It's
I
my
enjoyed meeting you.
bald
Sean
my
and
baldness.
Brent, meeting you tonight. I already knew. Nah, so good
All
talking
right,
with
guys.
you. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you, everybody. There's no Geordie, so guess what? No free T-shirts, suckers. Ha ha! Get some. And then we will be.
What's the schedule,
on-
Matt? Tell us what the schedule is.
We're gonna not be here on the 31st, but we will be back on the 7th, and then on the 21st. So yeah, well, guess what? Geordie ain't here, dat sass. So he ain't here with this free shirt shenanigans. Okay. So all right. 7th, 7 p.m. That one's real easy. 21st, also 7 p.m. Central Time, whatever daylight or not that we're in now. It doesn't matter. All right, y'all. Thank you for joining, chat. We love
Yep.
you guys.
Thank
We
you,
wouldn't
chat.
be here
Love ya.
without you. And
Have a good
I guess
night,
that's a
guys.
wrap, guys.
Yeah.
Have a good
See you guys next
night.
time.
Have a good one. Bye.
Tune in tight to the digital roar. Brent's got tech. He's laying the lore from circuits and chips to the cyber core. Plug in and we'll give you more. Maps on the edge, watch those pixels fall. He cracks the code, solves it all. Dark web secrets, firewalls tall in the cyber jungle. Here's the call.